Everybody, Razor here. So I want to go over five tips I wish I knew before I started playing Path of Exile 2, being a player that comes from heavily supported Blizzard games. I play a lot of D2R hardcore, ladder racing, ladder finishing. You know, I've done the PD2 thing, also hardcore, ladder. We're not going to talk about my accolades per se, but if you know, you know. Just because you can hardcore in D2R, you can hardcore on Diablo 4, you can hardcore on PD2, doesn't mean you can hardcore on Path of Exile 2. It's a whole different game. It's a whole different beast. Please kind of take that notion and throw it out the window. I think a lot of people will come to realize that they'll get discouraged and they won't play the game. They'll start making excuses about the game. They'll start naysaying the game, and they won't give the game a proper chance because the game is beating them. It's defeating them. And that's the number one tip. Leave your ego at the door. Start from ground zero and start a standard league character. Learn the mechanics of the game. Do everything you can possible to familiarize yourself with the mechanics of the bossing, because there are a lot of one-shot mechanics, and I've seen a lot of guys who have transitioned from the community that we built in D2R, and they've ended up either quitting or staying standard league until they just get bored of the game. And unfortunately, there's nothing wrong with that, but as I said before, don't think because you can D2R hardcore or any Blizzard game hardcore that you can POE2 hardcore. Number two, I'd say, is dodge, dodge, dodge. Dodge, dodge. Dodge some more. Dodge. Learn to dodge. Learn to... it's not a game where you can plant yourself and over DPS people, especially early on. You actually have to make an effort. You have to be cognitive at all times, and you have to be aware. And there's a lot of things you'll run into when you come into mapping is the modifiers and the bosses that you're running into. You need to actually be conscientiously aware of what kind of maps you're spawning, where you're at, and I think awareness is crucial. I don't see this game on a hardcore gameplay as somebody who can just kind of turn their brain off and just grind and not pay the ultimate consequence, because unless, of course, you're out there RMTing the best gear, and even then with the best gear, if you juice up your maps a lot, you can still die. Death is inevitable if you're not paying attention. I would say number three, details matter. Even early on, details really matter. And what do I mean by that? What does my gear look like? What are my resists before I'm approaching every boss? Like, there are bosses, 3 or 4 bosses, and you'll run into these sub bosses. And what you have to come to realize is each one of those have predominantly like fire damage or lightning damage. And so you have to be conscientious of what type of elemental damages are being thrown at you. And you have to also be conscientious of the one-shot mechanics. Like, for example, like if you're fighting Executioner, he'll drop that tomb. It doesn't matter how stacked up you are, where your resists are. If you don't know to avoid that, you will one-shot die if you get stuck in the middle of it. So, like, the reality is awareness is crucial. Making sure that your play style correlates with your build. A lot of guys will start the game and they'll say something like, "Oh, I'm just gonna, wing it." And something as simple as not putting support gems early on into your skill gems will make a huge difference. Like, if you're running an Infernalist and you can't put Meat Shield in there, you're going to notice that your minions are dropping real quickly and respawning, and then you're getting overthrown. Just really basic things that awareness, and just because you think it's minimal or not substantial enough to actually worry about, I promise you it makes a huge difference. And what I would say is the currency itself. The currency style, if you don't play PoE1, I wasn't aware of the currency style. So to me, it was like, it has its benefits, but it also has its negatives. Just because most people are using currency in order to buy items, really, at this point. And the PoE trader is fantastic. I like the PoE trader system. I like the fact that you can link. Here's an example here. So, like, if I come in to my stash, this is actually my second playthrough. I had done a first playthrough which was a standard league playthrough, and then I transitioned into a hardcore league playthrough because I wanted to get familiar with the mechanics. But let's not steer off the topic of the video here. The currency itself, right? Stash tabs are important. Organization's important. It really is. After a while, I stopped putting into my own stash tabs and started more kind of focusing on the guild that we're trying to get going here. But understanding what each currency does, right? Even early on, these orbs of transmutations, these orbs of augmentations. So if you come from a PoE background, you're gonna look at this and be like, whatever. It's exactly what you're used to. But if somebody's coming from like transitioning from D2R or Diablo 4 or wherever it is you're coming from, because I've noticed my community, also a large portion of that community had transitioned over to PoE when it had launched, and I think for the different style of gameplay in between both of them, you're going to run into a lot of information overload. And I think people need to be conscientious of how they're using the currency. I would highly suggest that, like, if you haven't exalted, right, unless you're playing solo self-find, if you haven't exalted, it'll serve you more value going on the PoE trader site, trading for an item that already kind of aligns with what you're looking for, than it is using the exalt to roll an item, hoping that you'll get something worthy of wearing, right? So that's just my take on it. I would go that route before I would start rolling all my exalts at level 12 when you only have 2, or level 16 when you only have 7, or whatever it is, to try to get an item that correlates with what you're trying to correlates with your build. But I guess to each their own. It all depends what style of game they're playing right now. And patience, man. I'd say the number one, that should have been the first one. You need a level of patience to play this game on hardcore. You do. You need a level of patience, a level of understanding, and you need to realize that this is not the same beast. And I really hope that people who switch over from the community that we built on the D2R side to PoE finds a way to acquire the patience to transition into hardcore. Because I've seen a lot of guys, I would say 80% of the hardcore community that I come from on D2R switched over to PoE, and they're playing Standard League. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that. But it goes to show you that this game is hard. It's much harder. And it's unarguably harder than the traditional hardcore gameplay of older ARPGs. And I would argue that there are people who are PoE 1 players who don't want to learn new tricks or don't want to put up with it. I've seen a lot of old school PoE 1 players say, forget it. I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go back and play PoE 1, or I'm going to go play something else. They've kind of given up on the game, and I'm going to argue that, it's tough to teach old dog new tricks. It really is, and that might sit on well with some people. But those are about the 5 tips that I say that are really important when it comes to transitioning over to older style ARPG gameplays on hardcore over to PoE2. PoE2 is the future regardless of what type of naysayers are out there. There's going to be a lot of people out there that are going to say, oh, this game is this game is that, this game is this, it's that, it's that. The difference between this game and the other games is this isn't the full game. It's got the support from the developers. It's going to constantly keep growing and pushing. The community is pretty interactive, and hopefully we're going to see something great come out of PoE2. I plan on staying in this community for a while. As you can tell, I've been pushing hardcore right now. I think currently I'm at 91, almost 92 hardcore. So I'll give you guys a build video in my next video. But don't forget, if you like this type of content, subscribe, like. Catch you next time. Razor signing out.